Imagine walking into a cave and seeing hundreds of stone statues, warriors frozen in terror, their faces twisted in their final moments. You're here to claim the ultimate prize, the head of Medusa, the most feared monster in Greek mythology. But what if I told you that the real monster in this story isn't who you think it is? What if the woman with snakes for hair was actually the victim all along? Here's something that might shock you. Medusa wasn't born a monster. In fact, she was considered one of the most beautiful women in the ancient world. Picture this. She was the only mortal among three sisters, born to Perseus and Ceto, two primordial sea gods who ruled the depths of the ocean. While her sisters were immortal gorgons from birth, Medusa was blessed with humanity and cursed with extraordinary beauty. Men would travel across entire kingdoms just to catch a glimpse of her stunning appearance. But here's what makes her story even more remarkable. Despite having countless suitors throwing themselves at her feet, Medusa chose a different path entirely. Out of pure devotion to Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, Medusa dedicated her life to serving in the temple. She took sacred vows of purity, becoming Athena's most devoted priestess. Can you imagine the discipline that required? In a world where beauty was power, she chose duty over desire. Thousands upon thousands of visitors would flock to Athena's temple, not just to worship the goddess, but to witness Medusa's breathtaking beauty. Her hair was so magnificent that people whispered it could rival that of Athena herself. And that's where our story takes its first dark turn. You see, the gods may be immortal, but they're not immune to very human emotions. Jealousy began to simmer in Athena's divine heart. How dare a mere mortal outshine a goddess? This growing resentment would soon become the catalyst for one of mythology's most tragic transformations. Enter Poseidon, the tempestuous god of the sea, whose very presence could shake the earth and whose temper was as unpredictable as a raging storm. The moment he laid eyes on Medusa during one of her walks along the shore, he became utterly obsessed. But this wasn't love. This was possession, pure and simple. Here's where the story gets absolutely infuriating. Medusa, being the honorable woman she was, repeatedly rejected Poseidon's advances. She had made sacred vows. She was devoted to Athena. But Poseidon didn't care about her feelings, her dedication, or her sacred commitments. There was something even more sinister at play here. Poseidon and Athena were locked in a bitter rivalry, and Poseidon saw Medusa not just as a beautiful woman, but as Athena's prized possession that he could steal away. Talk about using someone as a pawn in a divine power struggle. When Medusa continued to refuse his advances, Poseidon made a decision that would change everything forever. He decided to take what he wanted by force. And where do you think he chose to commit this horrible act? Right inside Athena's sacred temple, the very place where Medusa had sought protection. Can you imagine her terror? She ran to the one place she thought would offer her sanctuary, the temple of the goddess she had served so faithfully. She must have believed that Athena would protect her, that her years of devotion meant something. But as Poseidon assaulted her on the sacred ground, where was Athena? Absolutely nowhere to be found. But here's where this story becomes a nightmare of injustice. After Poseidon had finished his assault and vanished, guess who finally decided to show up? That's right, Athena herself. But instead of offering comfort to her traumatized priestess, instead of seeking justice against Poseidon, Athena did something that will make your blood boil. She punished Medusa. Let that sink in for a moment. The victim became the criminal. The goddess was supposedly enraged by what had happened in her temple, but instead of directing her fury at the god who had committed the crime, she turned it on the woman who had suffered it. Why? Because punishing Poseidon was unthinkable. He was a major god, her rival, her equal. But Medusa, she was just a mortal. she was expendable. So Athena enacted a curse so cruel, so twisted, that it defies all logic and justice. That beautiful hair that had once rivaled the goddess's own, transformed into a writhing mass of venomous serpents. Those eyes that had once inspired poetry and devotion, cursed so that anyone who looked into them would be turned to stone forever. In an instant, Medusa went from being the most beautiful woman in the world to the most feared monster. She became a living nightmare, isolated and alone, with no hope of human connection ever again. Every person who looked at her would die. Can you imagine the absolute despair? The crushing loneliness? Word of Medusa's transformation spread like wildfire across the ancient world. Warriors saw her as the ultimate test of courage, the ultimate trophy to claim. They came from far and wide, seeking glory and fame by taking her head. But here's the tragic irony. Every single one of these so-called heroes met the same fate. Turned to stone, becoming permanent statues surrounding Medusa's lair. That is, until Perseus entered the picture. The son of Zeus himself, Perseus was tasked with bringing back Medusa's head. But even a hero needed divine help to face such a challenge. The gods equipped him with an arsenal of divine weapons. Hades' helmet of invisibility, Hermes' winged sandals, Athena's polished bronze shield that could reflect Medusa's deadly gaze, and a sword sharp enough to cut through anything. Notice the bitter irony here? Athena, the same goddess who had refused to protect Medusa, now aided the hero who would kill her former priestess. Using the shield as a mirror, Perseus approached the sleeping Medusa and with one swift stroke, severed her head. But even in death, Medusa had one final surprise. From her severed neck sprang Pegasus, the magnificent winged horse, the child of her assault by Poseidon, born only in the moment of her death. It's both beautiful and heartbreaking. New life emerging from such tragedy. Here's the truth that changes everything about this story. Medusa isn't the monster of Greek mythology. She's the victim. She's a powerful symbol of how society has always blamed women for the crimes committed against them. She trusted the gods, served faithfully, and when she needed protection most, she was abandoned and then punished for her own victimization. But here's something beautiful that emerges from this tragedy. Even in death, Medusa found a way to protect others. Her head became a powerful amulet, used to ward off evil and protect the innocent. The woman who was transformed into a monster became a guardian against true evil. Perseus would use Medusa's head in several adventures, and it played a crucial role when he defeated the Titan Atlas. Even after death, she continued to serve and protect just as she had in life. The next time you see Medusa's image, whether in art, literature, or popular culture, remember her real story. Remember that behind the snake hair and the deadly gaze was once a woman who deserved better, who deserved justice, who deserved protection. Her tale reminds us that even the gods are capable of the worst human failings: jealousy, cruelty, and the abuse of power. Medusa is probably one of the most misunderstood characters in Greek mythology. She's often regarded as a cruel monster, but she had only the best intentions and placed her trust in those who ultimately failed her. What do you think about this tragic tale? Does it change how you view the Medusa myth?